When we first started, I had 10 products. A lot of the products we have, they've got GS1 extended data bar barcodes, which are amazing. And effectively, the systems we've ever used in the past, they don't understand them. So we either didn't use barcodes or we created our own. It's infinitely easier to start with them right than get to 1,400 products and then realize you have to redo them all. There's so many things that if I could just skip back a little bit and just get it right from the beginning, I'd have a lot more hair and a lot less gray.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Warehouse Insider Podcast. We have our first guest with us, Robbie Gleason, along with my co-host, Cliff Hardesty, and I'll turn it over to Robbie now to give some background on GB3PL and what they're doing over in the UK.
Hi, good to be here. I'm Robbie, and I guess the latest business I represent is GB3PL. It's very, 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 very early on in its very much in its infancy. We've been in business for the last 3 years as a medical supplies reseller, and during that time, we've grown and got our own warehouse and got staff and all that kind of thing. And the long-term goal of my business has always been to do fulfillment on the side, and it's been a long journey where every time I think we are about to turn a corner and be able to start taking customers, we've kind of come across another roadblock, and now we are in the final parts of just about to take on our first customer.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what would you say your motivation is for working in the business, Robbie?
I've ended up here by chance, to be fair. During COVID, if I give you the full background, so I used to sell on Amazon, just like as an Amazon FBA seller. So we used to buy things actually just from general retail stores, put an Amazon label on it, send it to an Amazon warehouse, and that kind of kicked off the whole selling on the internet. It's a relatively easy way to start selling, although you put a lot of effort in and don't get a lot out. Amazon take the vast majority of your money, but it was a good introduction. Yeah. But what it did mean is during COVID, the UK government, they gave what they call bounce back loans to people. So provided you could prove that you were a proper business, and you could prove that you'd had a certain amount of revenue in previous years, they were giving, I think they're like 5-year loans to help you keep your business running effectively. And I took as much money as they would offer me. I don't think we even had to start paying it back for a year, and the interest was almost nothing. So it was like free money almost, not quite, but almost. And at that point, I started playing about with some other ideas. I bought a 3D printer, and I planned to start making 3D printed parts. And then I also bought a cutter to cut vinyl to make stickers and graphics and things. And I started actually developing them into businesses. We started making some 3D printed mounts to hold like a thermometer, not thermometer, like a radiator thermostat for like the Hive system. And I actually sold those on Amazon. We probably sold thousands of them, but it was super time consuming. And I don't know if you've ever done 3D printing, but it's super stressful because you start a print off.
I've seen it, but I've never done it.
You could sit there for multiple hours waiting for your print to come out. And then when it comes out, it might not actually be perfect, and you might have to throw it in the bin and start again. So it's stressful. And I started making.
Do you still sell those, or is that?
No, that's long gone. That's long gone now. So I ended up getting an ultimatum from my wife, and she said, you can't do all of these things. So in the graphics, I actually did some graphics for a friend's like business on his van, and I thought that maybe that was where I was going to want to go. That was space intensive and like product intensive in terms of you kind of need to have expensive equipment and things. And basically, I saw an opportunity where men in this country, and I'm sure in America as well, they do hormone replacement therapy, and getting the supplies for that is difficult. The packaging it comes in, it's emblazoned with logos of what you're getting. And it's the kind of thing that a lot of people want to do in a sort of discreet way. So I saw this opportunity to build a website. And at that time, my full-time job was a web developer. So I built what was a WordPress website in like a week, and we started selling a few bits, and it took off. And we were really fortunate that during COVID, I was working from home every day. My wife had been furloughed she was working from home. So we both had an opportunity to kind of put some time into something, and it just grew. We started with like 10 products, a handful of orders, and I mean, like now we do about 10,000 orders a month. And a lot of that's because we focus on customer service. You don't get a box emblazoned with what's inside. We do what we do really well. I really do think we do. And also all the products we sell, they're single use. So you use one, you have to throw it in the bin. It's not sanitary to use it again. And if you bought one in the first place, there's a very good chance you need to buy another one. So we get really good repeat business. But from that, we've developed a good system for doing fulfillment ourselves. The things we fulfill are really difficult. So I've always seen fulfillment as a way of helping grow what we do, because the products we fulfill are complicated in terms of like batch numbers and best before dates and weird barcodes and things. So if someone comes to me and says, I want you to ship t-shirts for me or lipsticks or whatever it is, they're infinitely easier. So fitting them into what we already do should be easy. So the motivation, to go back to that question, was purely just to find doing something I was passionate about. Like, I was a web developer for quite a long time, and I didn't particularly enjoy doing it. Going to work was a chore. I would probably avoid doing work wherever possible, but I was a bad employee. There's no denying it. They did not get value out of having me as an employee. If I was my own employee back then, I'd have fired myself for sure. But when you do something for yourself that you can see grow, and it's addictive. It's addictive just watching the more orders coming in, seeing the revenue go, seeing the amount of products that you sell go up. It's super addictive. So I don't feel like I'm working when I'm here, which my wife hates, because I will come in early, and if I didn't have a wife to go home to, I'd probably have a camper bed in the corner, because I'm sure you both know there's never an end to what could be done. Like, where do you stop? Like, do you get to the end of the day and think, you know what, I've got nothing else I can do? There's always something to do. So I would 100% be here far too much, which will probably lead on to another question where you ask me what hobbies I've got outside of the warehouse, and I'm going to tell you that I don't have any.
It's kind of funny. So my next question was going to be what your work-life balance was, being a business owner in the UK, but
Not great.
it sounds like you might have already given me my answer there.
I'll be honest with you, it's a lot better than it used to be. Some of the early issues are not having enough staff to kind of do all of the, not rubbish jobs, but there are jobs that as an owner of a business you probably shouldn't do. There are some jobs that I shouldn't do that I still do. I cleaned the toilet the other day because no one else was going to do it, and I don't want to pay for a cleaner. I've painted the walls in my office. I've put racking up. We've got a little hand sweeper for the floor. I swept the floor the other day because I had a customer come in. Because the people who I've got picking and packing orders, for me, the most important thing they can do is pick and pack orders. So I don't want them to stop to clean the floor. I'd much rather do it. It's probably not very good value for money, but you should never ask someone to do something that you're not prepared to do yourself. Like, maybe there are some jobs that I can't do. Like, if I needed some welding doing, I'd like to have a go at doing it. But I know that if I welded something, it is not going to be safe enough for someone to use. So I'd happily pay for someone to do that. But yeah, all the jobs in the warehouse, I have picked orders. I've started picking orders. I've packed orders. I get people to do things in a particular way, and I, because I picked an order 6 months ago or whatever, I asked them to do something in a new way, and they don't always feel like they can say that they don't think something's right. But then I have to go out occasionally and help out when we get busy, and you realize what doesn't work again. So yeah, I think it's really important to keep your hand in, as it were, to understand how all those things work.
Do you think there's a difference in, I don't know how much time you spent around US businesses or business owners. Do you think there's a difference between like call it hustle culture here, kind of on the same topic as work-life balance? Like, do you think there's an expectation of small business owners to work really hard or work long hours or maybe not have as much work-life balance as they would elsewhere?
Hustle culture is a bit of a weird kind of phrase, isn't it? When I hear hustle culture, I think of people running multi-level marketing businesses and stuff, like posting like lines and stuff on their Instagram. But
Fair.
I don't know that I see that in a positive way. But I get I think the thing is, as a small business, you've got to. There was a point when I first kind of because there was a point where I was doing 2 jobs. Even when we'd moved into our own storage, I was still actually trying to do my old job while growing this. Like, there's a point where you can't, but the longer you can get paid by someone else, I didn't take a wage out of the business for such a long time, because the longer you can keep pumping it in, obviously the better.
Yeah.
But there was a point where I used to come in at 9 o'clock and I'd go home at 5 o'clock, and I changed and I started coming in at 8 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock, and then 6 o'clock, and then 5 o'clock, and I'd leave at 5 or 6 or 7. And those super long days they're really tiring, and you probably shouldn't do them for too long. But when you get like an extra half a week's worth of work done, oddly enough, things progress much, much quicker. And this is why I really find it difficult now to stop and not come into work, because I'm just productive. I am super productive. I come in early and I leave late and I get a lot done. And I tell myself that by doing that, I'll be able to retire a lot earlier. Because, things grow a lot quicker, and that can only be a good thing. But in reality, I don't think I'll ever retire, because this is the first time I've enjoyed working. When you own a business, even if you do go home, it doesn't really make any difference anyway, because you're always like, oh, just do a bit more work on my laptop, or just answer some emails on my phone or whatever. But I'll be honest, that is something I'm getting better at, like just putting my phone down or whatever. And having staff to do some of the other bits makes that a lot easier as well. Some of the biggest changes for me is having people help with more of the back office stuff. There was a point where I was doing like custom service and all sorts, and it's time consuming, and it's really disruptive. You'll start something and you see someone with a chat message asking you about their parcel or whatever, and that forever having to stop means you never get anything done. So paying people to kind of do that and take that pressure off is it's good. But it's
What's your day look like when you come in? What do you spend most of your hours doing?
That's actually a really good question. A bit of everything. That is the really difficult thing about my day still, is that there's so many people that want my attention. Like, it's sometimes hard to kind of focus on it. But a lot of my time at the moment is focused on the 3PL. Whether it be we're building a new website, which is obviously time consuming. I'm doing quotes for people that I want to come on board, but also we're in the middle of migrating from one warehouse management system to another, which is like a massive move.
Right.
So there's a lot of work to do that, and I've been through those changes a few times, and I know that the pre-work on those is the important bit. Like, we're going to go live in like 2 weeks, so the peak of pressure. It's a good, although it's a good time, bad time to have a podcast, is a good time as well, because there's a lot going on.
Cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you faced and maybe how you plan on dealing with those being a younger company?
Okay. I mean, the biggest one we have at the moment is around space, which is probably more unique to the UK than it is to the US, because I think you guys can get warehouses a lot cheaper than we can. Like space out there is a lot cheaper. I mean, obviously, I'm sure there's places in America that are a lot more expensive than others, but on the whole, like the UK is just expensive to have land because obviously we're considerably smaller than you guys. I've got a 5-year lease on the warehouse I'm in at the moment, and we are probably 80% full. And I'm only 1 year into my lease, so yeah. There's we're on an industrial estate, and there's quite a lot of other units here, and we'd had discussions with the landlord previously about being able to take like a bigger unit, and there is a bigger unit, but they've basically said to me that I'm not allowed to have it. They're gonna knock it into one that's way too big for me to take. So we're now stuck in this situation where I want to have conversations with 3PL customers who are going to tell me that they want X amount of space. And right at this present second, I don't actually know where I'm going to put anybody. At the moment, the conversations I'm having, I'm not telling them that we've got a space issue. There is another warehouse on this industrial estate, which is the same size as the one we're in at the moment. But the logistics of having two is not great. I don't know how it works in the US, but like this is a private industrial estate, but because the general public can drive onto it, like the roads are classed as the public highway. So if I want to drive my forklift 100 yards around the corner to here, my forklift has to have a license. There's so many rules and regulations we kind of have to go through. So if I want to use the other warehouse for like long-term storage and here for picking, I still have to get things from one to the other. Um, and that's probably fine in the middle of summer, pulling like a pallet truck around. But what happens when it's the middle of winter, or at the moment we have rain every single day? Like if I bring a customer's stock around on a pallet truck and all their boxes get wet, like, or do we buy a truck and then have a truck take something 100 yards around the corner? It's a difficult kind of situation. I don't 100% know that I've got an answer to it at the moment. So I've actually had a conversation with another landlord, and we're maybe going to move again, which is not great. Having to move a year after we moved into here, and then I've got a lease on here that I either have to just continue paying or I have to try and find someone to take it over. You're going to ask me a question about what I would tell myself uh, like 3 years ago, and it would be, you need more space than you think you do.
It's not a bad problem to have, and it's probably a good
Yeah,
problem to
exactly.
have.
Yeah, I mean, like if I was like, oh my god, I don't think I'm ever going to fill this place, that would be bad. But you just, like most things with business, it's like this big chicken and egg thing. Like you need to have a massive warehouse to be able to tell customers that you'll take their things in. But there's no landlord that just says, hey, you know what, have a 200,000 square foot warehouse, just pay for the bits you need. Like, so it's, they want you to sign a long lease, and you want to sign a long lease for security and to get the best price. But we've only been going for 3 years, and the first space that I took was 100 square foot. So we've grown as a percentage massively in that amount of time, and we continue to grow. How do I know what I need in a month's time, 6 months' time, a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Like it's almost impossible to know. So you've just kind of got to guess, hope you haven't overestimated, hope you haven't underestimated, and if you've done either of those two, figure out some weird plan. Like I know that we're not unique with this issue. I spoke to another fulfillment company, and they told me they've been through like exactly the same things. They've had units all over the place and had to like buy a van to move stuff about. It's just No one tells you this. There's not the kind of thing you learn in school. Or
What's the disadvantage of having maybe two kind of separate facilities outside of, is there stuff you wouldn't think about and maybe not having to move back and forth?
yeah, so that we did consider maybe we split the 3PL to do one, and we do the other warehouse to do our own things. It's a lot of it is it's more time consuming. Obviously, the more people you have doing more orders in one location, you get that kind of economies of scale. If we decide that we want to do something else purely in one, then I need staff over there that can't be over here, or I have to have them kind of walking between the two, which isn't great. The other thing in the UK is we've got something called business rates, where you got state taxes or whatever, where to have this business in this location, we pay like a percentage of the value of the property. If you've got one big unit, you pay less in comparison to having two that make up the same amount of space. Literally everything is just more expensive by having two. So it's not ideal, but it might just be the way that we have to work it.
So I kind of know what my personal experience has been, working in a small business here in the US, but I'm curious of what it's like owning a small business in the UK.
This is probably a challenge to go back to one of your previous questions, but one of the most difficult things with being a small business, a new business, is that no one tells you in advance, or even as you're going, kind of the things that you need to do. As an example, when you have a certain number of staff in this country, you need to have, there's certain like health and safety regulations that you have to go by. There's paperwork you have to do. There's certain, there's all these things that no one calls you up. When you register a limited company in this country, you don't get a handbook. No one says, oh, when you do this, you need to do this. When you do this, you need to do that. So the time hopefully you find out before you make a massive mistake, but there's the potential. Yeah, there's the potential for you for someone, I don't know, to have an accident on a ladder or something, and you have someone come around and then say, oh, all of these things here that you legally have to do as a business owner, you've not done them. And your response of, well, you didn't tell me that I needed to do them, isn't sufficient anymore. You have to go out and find what you don't know, but how do you find what you don't know? Because you can't search for what you don't know. So I've found out most of the things I was meant to do by someone saying to me, "Oh, have you started doing that yet?" And finding out that I'm probably 6 months behind. Yeah, and they're all mistakes that if you get them wrong, like your whole business could be shut down because of it. I don't know what the solution is though. That's all that information is available on the various government websites, but like finding it is, like I say, you don't know what you don't know.
Probably what they, or at least what I have experienced, I think that problem can be generalized into a lot of areas of, as a small team with less structure and less guidance, you don't know what you don't know. I think is a really good way to put it. Like half of the problem is defining the problem.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think for a lot of, especially younger business owners like me and Cliff, you don't have experience to lean on in any of those regards. And even if you had experience, maybe it's not relevant. But for me, what has been helpful is having not a mentor, but someone who has maybe walked a similar path and can kind of lead you around the pitfalls that you might otherwise be, subject to. It's probably more so for you being in more of a physical business.
mm,
So us being in software, there's less like physical liability. I think it's more of like fines and like you didn't do this one thing, but it's okay because no one actually got hurt.
Yeah. So I guess if you're lucky, when you start a new business, you're starting a business that you've done previously for someone else. Then you know already the things that the bigger business that you've come from did. But with this, like I said, I was a web developer. Like, although I've done some jobs outside of that, you don't think about health and safety so much when you work in an office or whatever. You don't think about there's a rules and regulations on how much you can put on pallet racking, how far away two pallet racks can be from each other, how far away a pallet rack can be from an upright from the that holds up the warehouse. There's all guidelines for all those things that we just put the pallet racking up when we first moved in. Like, how do you know? There's only so many YouTube videos you can watch on these things, and then even worse, a lot of the YouTube videos, they're American, and the rules in America are very different to the rules are in the UK potentially. I feel like we're probably more rule bound, but maybe that's just a feeling. Maybe you tell me it's completely opposite, and
I think I'd have the same feeling. I don't know if I have enough factual evidence to support either side of the argument, but
yeah. I feel like you can just get away with a bit more in America. I don't know why that is, but then you're more litigious than we are. Like I feel like in America you're more likely to get sued by another private entity,
yeah.
but here the government will do you over at any opportunity.
Well, I think there's certain agencies in America that are known for. I'm not going to name any, right now, but I think there are certain ones that are known for being particularly hard to deal with and maybe more meticulous than others.
Right. You don't mean like the CIA, I'm guessing, because I don't imagine they care about people's pallet racking, but
No, talking more on a tax.
oh, okay. So you guys actually have to file taxes as individuals, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's bizarre. See here, if you as a business owner, I have to file my taxes because, well, actually, I don't have to. If I just pay myself like a standard salary, like a normal employee, then you don't have to do it. But as soon as your pay gets complicated, whether it be from like dividends and all that kind of thing, then it gets more complicated and you have to file a tax return. But average Joe on the street, their taxes are all just done for them by their
Wow.
like on a month to month basis by their employer. But I think I think in America your tax system might be kind of powered by the people who make money from tax software, is my understanding from yeah.
It's a ton of lobbying from those companies to keep things the way they are, or change them in favor of
Big business.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
It's kind of the
there's been a
theme
ruling,
in
hasn't there?
America.
I know we're going off topic here, but I think there's been a ruling recently that's allowed people to kind of do it in a slightly more simple way, is my understanding.
Now, Robbie, do you pay yourself a salary and then take like an owner's withdrawal, maybe quarterly or something? Is that kind of how you pay yourself?
Yeah, in the UK, there's a certain amount of salary you can pay yourself where you actually don't pay any tax on it. Like everybody has an allowance. It's not a lot, but it's some. And then you can pay yourself dividends to a point, and you pay a lot less tax. So um, accountants in the UK are fully aware of all of the methods of making sure a business owner pays the minimal amount of tax. It Going back to COVID, actually, a lot of people had a lot of issues with that though, because we didn't hand out like you had you had the checks, didn't you? Yeah, we didn't get that. But if you were employed, you could get some money back that was based on the amount of tax that you paid. So yeah, which makes a lot of sense. Like you should only ever get back out what you put in, and there are a lot of people who are effectively paying themselves in a structured way, so they paid very little tax. And then when it came to COVID, the government were like, "You're either not entitled to anything, or you're entitled to very, very little." And there was an uproar. But like, I think if you game the system, then you should fully expect to be like gamed back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dug your own grave there.
Yeah, I'm quite I'm left leaning. I feel like paying in is a good thing, and because it helps everything. It's a thing across the world where it doesn't matter how left of centre you are when it comes to politics. As soon as you own a business, you just veer off right because you just like, I want to pay as little tax as possible. Like technically, we're a 4-party country. There's only really 4 parties that have got any number of people behind them. But in reality, it's actually only 2-party. Like you either left or right. Our right is quite right now, I guess, and our left is sort of in the middle, really. But I don't think our parties really align in the same way. They still are Labour. You might think you're Democrats, but actually, I think your Democrats are still much further right than ours. So yeah, it's interesting. We talked about previously. I love American politics. I think as an outsider looking in, it's like looking into a fish tank um, and seeing lots of very odd fish.
Robbie, with that, I would ask you, what would you give yourself? What advice would you give yourself, 3 years ago?
Barcodes, barcodes. When we first started, I had 10 products, and a lot of the products we have, they've got GS1 extended data bar barcodes, JITIN part, or do you call them JITINs, or if you use a different name, don't you, for the like the identify part of a barcode, I think. But there's that, and then there's some other bits, and effectively, most of the systems we've ever used in the past, they don't understand them. So we either didn't use barcodes or we created our own. And some of the early ones we created, they had like words in them and they would try to be descriptive. And I just wish I'd started with either like a neat formula for them to begin with, or just use the ones that they came with, because it's infinitely easier to start with them right than get to 1,400 products and then realize you have to redo them all. Like, it's just, we've got a lot of historic SKUs and barcodes and things that I just wish were different, but I can't change them now because it's just so much work.
So when you're talking about a lot of the pre-work for your WMS migration, is probably what you're referring to a lot largely, is making sure that data is correct, so that when you're starting over, it kind of...
Yeah, exactly. And there's been a point in my warehouse where I have renamed all of my locations because the previous locations, like the formatting for them, it just wasn't right. And relabeling and renaming an entire warehouse, even at the size of our warehouse, is a long process. So yeah, like there's so many things that if I could just skip back a little bit and just get it right from the beginning, was probably, I'd have a lot more hair and a lot less grey. But with the one of the good things about this new WMS that we're moving to is they've actually it's an unusual one that these barcodes that we have on a lot of medical products, they're super common with medical products, but because they've got a like a lot number and a use by date in them, the barcode changes. So one batch has got a slightly different barcode to the next batch, and no WMS that I've used to this point has been able to understand that there's a bit in the middle that stays the same and the rest that changes. But this new system we're moving to, they've implemented a change specifically for us that reads it, understands what the barcode is, just takes the bit we need, and it's actually going to revolutionize the way that we work in the warehouse, because at the moment we either have to relabel items or we have to like label the pick face and then products can only live in one particular location. So now effectively we'll be able to put anything anywhere. So it might actually fix some of our space issues because we'll be able to mix things a lot better. The software is called Blade Pro, and actually I think we're customer number 3. It's been developed by another 3PL. They've been using it and developing it for like the last 15 years since they've been going. And I guess like a lot of people who've developed their own software, they come to a point where they realize their software's got some value. So they are,
Try and go and sell
yeah,
it.
basically, like if you can attach a monthly fee to a piece of software that you already developed, then why wouldn't you? But because they've only ever used it internally, it works brilliantly for their business. There's just ways that they've always done it. There's terminology that works for them internally, but when you give it to an external business who's just used to working in a slightly different way, there needs to be some flexibility in the system. So they've got us as a customer almost specifically because I've been through a lot of WMSs. Like we've almost changed every year to every 2 years because they've never quite met the requirements. So we've got a ton of experience of what does work, what doesn't work, and that's all being fed back in to make the product work for us and then hopefully work for other businesses like us as well.
How'd you find them?
Actually, the same place I found Cliff on a forum about warehousing. Yeah, I popped there's a warehousing forum that doesn't actually have many people on it. It's pretty niche, isn't it? And I basically I put a post on there saying we use this WMS at the moment and it's not working out for us. We want to be a 3PL. I need a better piece of software. And there just happened to be someone from that business that was on there. We had a conversation. This is the first time that I felt like listened to, which is nice. An interesting thing recently, not the WMS we use right now, but the one we used previously. I raised they've got like an ideas forum, and I raised an idea about something that should be standard. And they said, that's a fantastic idea. We'll get onto that. And that was in 2021. And I actually had an email from their ideas forum literally a couple of days ago that said, we're still working on this. I think the thing is when a business uses the software themselves, there's a benefit to them making an improvement. If there's a business who are purely a software developer, there's a cost attached to everything. If I say, if you make this change, I can save 5 seconds per dispatch, which is massive at scale. But if you're the web developer or the developer of the software, you'll look at it and say, well, that's going to cost us X amount. And they don't get anything back for that. Like, yeah, their customers would be happier, but they're all in at least 1 year contract. I take real offense at being charged for something that they will probably end up giving to everyone else. Like, and that's the thing I always struggle to get over. I understand if I said I wanted a really unique integration, that maybe I'd have to pay to get that bit done. But at the same time, if they do a piece of development work for me, I don't own that. If someone else pops up and they want it, they'll probably charge it out to the same to someone else, and they've already done it. Like, and I find that offensive on many levels. Like, I just think as a software developer, the money that we pay should go back into improvements, not just keeping it working. Like, there should be a constant rollout of improvements, and the money just goes in and never seems to come back out, and things stop working rather than more things working.
It goes the wrong
Yeah,
way.
it does. It does. But you get stuck. We're quite fortunate, I guess, in terms of when I've wanted to move software, we've been of a size where it's a pain to move, but it's not that difficult.
Not impossible.
But if you're a 3PL and you've got 10 customers, 20 customers, 30 customers, 50 customers, 100 customers, and they all use your software day to day, and you then say to them, you know what, we're moving to something better. We're gonna have to teach all of you to use something new. It's just you'll get a WMS is so embedded in a business like ours that they know that you almost can't leave. And I think some of them probably play on that.
So one thing, Robbie, like, are your current systems that you have in place, are they scalable?
The ones we use right at this present second, I mean, technically, yes. The WMS we use at the moment is Ship Hero, which there are businesses that they're fulfillment businesses that use them to fulfill, I mean, millions of orders a year. Ship Hero themselves use their own software. Whether they use the same version that everybody else gets, I don't know. But I think one of the main reasons for wanting to move away to what we're moving to, aside from some of the things that they're doing for us, like with barcodes and things, is using a WMS which is developed by an American developer means that there are things that aren't quite right when they're in the UK, because you've got weights that are slightly different. You obviously use pounds and ounces.
Right.
I don't know what a pound is. Like everything here, we're kilograms and grams. That's just so. Sometimes there's translations that kind of have to happen in the background that make things not work properly. We have different carriers to what you use there. USPS just don't exist here. We don't really use FedEx so much. So there's integrations that are super American that we just don't have any use for. And someone like Ship Hero, I don't think they've got a big customer base in the UK. So they're not really, there's no incentive again for them to kind of make things work for the few UK customers they've got. Whereas what we moved to, they're in the UK, they understand the UK, they understand Royal Mail, the carrier, are different to all the rest or whatever. So I think Ship Hero is scalable, but not for us. But what we moved to, I mean, I know it works at scale because they are. I think we fulfill like 10,000 orders a month. They fulfill on their busiest days 10,000 orders in a day. So
Right. So they've kind of proven it for them.
exactly, yeah. So that, and it's nice to know that they use it in exactly the same way that we want to use it as a 3PL. Like I say, if they can do 10,000 orders a day with it, then our 10,000 a month should be up to the job.
Right.
I guess with that, I'll ask you our last question. Um, what do you think has been the most enjoyable part of your journey so far?
If you played an online role playing game, the goal is always to get to the next level. Like that's how they keep you within the game. Even Candy Crush, as an example, your goal is never to enjoy the level you're on. The goal is always to reach the next level. And as soon as you reach that next level, all you want to do is be level 70, level 71, level 100. And I've kind of kept this to be like that. Um, a lot of it's based on revenue. I have an amount of money we make on our best ever day, the amount of money we've ever made on our best ever month, our best ever year. And all I'm striving for right now is to just keep beating that number. And that alone just keeps me focused. And I remember the first time we did 100 orders in a day, or then 200 orders in a day, and uh, it feels like a win every time. It's addictive. It's addictive. It really is. So I don't know what our next big goal should be. I mean, we've just got our first 3PL customer. How long it will take us to get our second, I don't know. But that just keeps me driven. Like I want 10 customers. I want 50 customers. I want a bigger warehouse. Never been in a position to own my own home, and the landlord for the place that we rent effectively called us up the other day and said we want to sell the house. And I thought, as a company director, it's actually quite difficult to get a mortgage. And I called up my mortgage broker the other day, and they offered me enough money to be able to buy my own home. I'm 44 tomorrow, and I'm in a position to like own the home I live
It's
in.
funny you
That's
mentioned that,
amazing.
Robbie. So when my dad founded this company back in, officially we say 96, but he says, 94, 95, his whole goal was just to pay the house off. He had,
Oh, really?
yeah, I was born in 95. So he had a kid at the time. And when he went off and did his own thing, he was like, if I can just pay my cars off, if I can just pay the house off, if I can just do this, do that. And he was actually able to pay the house off when he was 35. And he thought that was just like the greatest thing ever. And he still talks about that today. He's where we've gotten to today, and he's like, I never thought we would be this big, and it just kind of happened. So I think
Yeah,
that the same is probably going to happen for you.
I hope so. I hope so. Like it's yeah, it's nice to feel like secure. Like in the when I was a web developer, I earned relatively good money, but it just never felt like I was ever going to get to that point where yeah, I'd just be able to like the cost of houses just keeps going up and up and up. And now finally we love where we live, and I'm super excited about possibly not having to move, which is obviously like moving house is a pain. So to be able to say, you know what, we get to stay here, we get to own it, and now I can paint the walls whatever color I want. Like
Yeah.
I'll have to ask anymore.
exactly, yeah.
Control holes in the
Exactly.
wall.
I want to put a painting up in on this wall, and I don't have to ask if it's okay or worry about repairing it.
You feel like it's actually yours. You can personalize it however you want. You probably
Exactly. Although technically it will probably be about 85% the banks, but
hey, you still have to do what you got to do.
Don't think
yeah.
about that.
But as much as possible, we are, and that I don't. Yeah, I know my wife feels the same. Like I don't think either of us kind of. Although I like to have thought that home ownership would be at some point in my future, but
Hmm.
once you get into your 40s and you don't own your own home, you do kind of wonder if that is ever going to be a thing. So, yeah, I feel like an adult. It's bizarre. I genuinely feel like an adult for the first time ever. And like I say, I'm literally 44 years old tomorrow.
Is home ownership rare in the UK?
I think statistically it's like 50-50 or something. But home ownership is something that people strive for here. I know there are other European countries where it's actually super rare, but I think in those countries it's a lot cheaper to rent. But a lot of people here see homes as an investment rather than just somewhere to live.
An
Yeah,
expense.
so people buy houses to try and rent out to try and make money, which means that rent gets super expensive. Um, I think from a financial perspective, it's probably cheaper to long term if you rented and put the money in a bank account. But it it feels like a real precious thing to be able to own where you live. Like we've got 3 cats and a dog, and although if my landlord's listening, it's 2 cats and a dog. Um, um, but yeah, we love animals, and it's probably not going to be a good thing because my wife wants all the strays off the street. But it just means that, yeah, we can if we want another cat or another dog, you just go and get one. Like you don't have to worry anymore. You don't have to worry about someone deciding that they don't want to rent the house to you anymore. They want to sell it and being effectively you're homeless in a way. So
Are you in the city of Norwich, or are you kind of like in the what we would consider like the suburbs, or kind of outside of the city?
we are 20 minutes drive from the centre of Norwich, 20-25 minutes. But actually, we're really rural. I get you have to remember with the UK that if whatever you have in America, you just sort of have to do that to it. And what we consider to be a long distance for you guys, you'd be like, I go to the shops and it's longer than that or whatever. Um, but so the village I live in, there are like 10 other houses. So yeah, it's quite small. And actually, everyone where we live has lived there forever. It's very local, but it's nice. It's like super quiet, and I can drive to work in 15 minutes. So
Yeah. So I guess what y'all would call a village, we would call a subdivision.
yeah, so our village is much smaller than a lot of other villages. Some villages can be 1,000 houses or something. But yeah, we're ours is super small, but it's nice. It's like a farming community, I guess, around us.
We kind of live in the same spot. We're an hour and a half northeast of Atlanta, so we're out in the country as well.
Where we used to live close to the city, and we were on one of the main roads that goes to the hospital. So night and day, either there's ambulances with sirens blaring, or even at night, the blue flashing lights would kind of light up the house or whatever. Whereas where we are now, there's no street lights. It's just quiet. and dark and peaceful. So it's nice. Where we live, houses have there's no history of houses being sold. So when you're trying to work out what the place is worth, there's nothing to go on. And my concern for the value is my landlords. I think their family have owned it forever. They used to own the farm that was behind it. So they've got an emotional attachment to the house, and emotional attachments to things normally means that people are prepared to either want more money for it, or they're prepared to pay more money for it. So I'm worried that the emotional attachment makes it more expensive than it's actually worth. So, and I'm a bit more of a, I'm a bit more of a typical man in that I only want to pay for what something's actually worth. Like,
Yeah. What's based in
Yeah.
fact, right? Instead of just what you feel like it's
exactly.
worth.
Exactly. You know, if they tell me it's worth X, then or if I get a professional to say this is what it's worth, that's all I want to pay for it. I do not want to pay for emotion.
We really appreciate your time today, and we really appreciate all your feedback and everything. I feel like I learned something. I know Jeremy probably did as well. So, with that,
Mhm.
guys, we appreciate you guys listening, and we'll catch you again on the next episode. Thank you. Bye.